is with us.
That's
I'll
right.
start that over. So yeah, 5:30 and a call to order. And do we have everyone but Kim? Is that what I understand?
That's right.
Okay. And hopefully she'll join us soon. And before we begin, are there any announcements or housekeeping items we need to be aware of?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Public comments?
No,
Nope.
I'm expecting John will be here at some point, but I mean, he's juggling a lot right now, so hopefully we'll
Okay.
see him.
All right. How about the minutes then?
All right, how about the minutes? Here we go. Minutes. All right, this was a pretty full one, if I recall. A lot of Catamount updates, discussion of the governance framework. Operation spending update.
Is that on the agenda for today? Or you can tell us that you spent the money?
I can give you an update on that.
Cause there was like, spend it by June 30th
Yeah,
or do something else with it.
you can give an update on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I could just do that right now. So, I'm definitely not gonna have time to coordinate a sign. So I asked, Andy earlier today at Catamount to write me an invoice for 1,500 for cost sharing, for the portalet. And then the other 1,500 we're gonna use for invasive species management. So I found a contractor, and just finished paperwork. So that gives us essentially 3 weeks to try to schedule in, essentially 5 7 hour days. Or 5 7 hour days, over that time. So I just reached out to Catamount today to kind of propose some management areas and work with them on kind of tweaking a plan so that temporary trail closures is as least burdensome as possible. And we'll coordinate that hopefully before I take off next Tuesday. I'm going away for vacation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's the update there. We should spend the whole budget.
Awesome.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Well done. Are there any corrections or amendments to the minutes?
Move to approve.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Right. Minutes are approved there then?
Got to vote.
Gotta vote, yes. All in
All in
favor?
favor?
All right, sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved.
Real quick, Gene, are you seeing the minutes right now still?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's every now and then I share a window instead of a screen or screen instead of a window.
I do all the
Okay.
time.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so do we have somebody from the Outdoor Family Center?
No one's here. Like I said, I am expecting John. We were chatting earlier this afternoon. He said he was going to be here, so maybe we can.
But
Just
if we
move
could
on.
swing this to the end of the agenda for John, I trust you guys to listen to John's report. I don't need to be here, and I'm going to have to drop at 6:30.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
That sounds like a good plan, and there aren't any upcoming events or use requests?
No.
All right, great. So last meeting, we took another look at the governance framework, and we just had a few minor changes that we wanted to make before approving. Some were literally capitalizing T's and making minor adjustments. One thing was adjusting the language around people on the committee volunteering. So we made a minor adjustment to that down near the end.
Yeah, I think Drew, that's probably worth looking at as a committee. I mean, the rest of them, I just specified some of the towns and then Drew
Yeah.
had written up what I thought was a good redraft, so I just went with it. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
Take another look at that.
does this work for you, Hans?
I read it ahead of time. Yeah, I thought it was good. I had no questions or concerns.
Yeah, me too.
Perfect. So any other adjustments that we need to make to this? Should we make this final?
I was happy with it to make it final.
Okay. All right,
Oh,
so
I think, tiny tweak.
Oh,
I think, so this is something that's been a little ambiguous. But I think if you look at the charge document, you are the Catamount Community Forest Committee, CCFC. If you look at the website, it does say Catamount Community Forest Management Committee. I just noticed that.
Yes.
So I don't think it really matters at all, but technically, I'm pretty
well,
sure.
are we gonna have a 5-letter acronym now?
Yeah, I've been using CCFC in general, just because I think that's what the charter says. So technically, that's official. I don't know if people care to change that. It just occurred to me.
yeah, I noticed that myself, and I think we should definitely use one name that we all agree on. And if we want to take out management from that, I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay,
So what does that mean with regards to this draft?
I think you can approve it.
Move to approve as amended.
Okay, great.
And the amendment is
second,
just removing management from the title.
Okay.
and
So-
I second.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I should say
Oh.
anyway, I see it in the second line too, so it should be correcting the name from
Everywhere.
Catamount Community Forest Management Committee to Community Forest.
Oh my gosh, it's every single
Yeah, That's okay.
paragraph.
It's an easy correction and as long as,
That's what control F is for, so
Yeah.
that's an easy fix.
so I move to approve with correction of the title of our committee.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, did I get a second? Somebody second.
Hans.
Good. Thanks, Hans.
All right. Gina Hans moving things forward.
All right, so
Gotta get
the
to the meat of this.
draft framework is approved. Yay, good job, everybody.
Yeah, well done.
I just got an email. We just got an email from Kim saying she'll be right there. Her laptop is, of course, restarting. So,
Okay.
Okay.
No worries.
Should we
All right,
wait a
well,
minute before we start into invasive species management plan until Kim is with
Sure,
us?
let's see. I think John is here.
Okay.
So, John, I just promoted you to panelist.
Hello, John.
John, you there? Can you hear us? Oh, there he goes. Yep.
he
All right.
shortened his title. Catamount Outdoor.
Outdoor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our name is way too long.
We just
That is-
having a long conversation about that.
And
Didn't
and
realize my-
people put them, different words in different orders, and it's a branding nightmare. But one that we can work on, but not right now, hopefully. So for our update, we are thick into summer activities. We've set records for our race series post-COVID pretty much every week, except for we had to cancel last night's mountain bike race due to thunder. But we've done really well this year with that, and our new full-time person is focused on that, and we're seeing great results from the work we've done last year, and then really supporting it for this year. We had our large employee training this past weekend. We had approximately 26 summer coaches to work in the camps, and have sold very close to 500 camp weeks this year. And so we spent all last weekend training and are starting on Monday. So nothing going on. And at the same time, we're still working on permitting and working with the town to present our business plans and contingency plans for the new building. With regards to permits for trails, it has been a drama, to say the least. A lot of up and downs and frustrations, but I think we're at a point now where we actually are feeling like we can submit. It has gone through several filters that have changed parts of it, but mainly in the way that we're describing the phasing, not how it will actually work over time, but that we need to plan to invest a significant amount of money in archaeological reviews, and we're trying to now get a full estimate of all the places where that's going to be impactful, and where we're going to have to pay for reviews and how much that might cost now and then over time. So that's been a big learning process, I think, for Dave too, to see how all these things intersect. We have, I felt like a bit of a ping pong ball between different state agencies, as they bat me around, and they're like, no, you can do this, you can't do that. And different people are telling me different things. And if I think we're finally at a place where we've been able to take everything we've heard and create a playing field that we can play on. So those are the major things that we have going on right now. Lots of other fun stuff. But that's it for now.
I think
Thanks,
just to update from that committee is we did get a first pass at the business plan, and it doesn't look, I mean, my wearing two hats, and David's heard this 100 times, wearing two hats. From the select board hat, we don't want the outdoor family center to have to rely on too many outside events to be break even. And from this committee's point of view, I think we don't want them to need 35 either. Well, it's the other way around. The select board wanted the minimum, and this committee kind of wants to know what the maximum is, and it kind of seems like it's shaking out to not even be a real issue. So I'm pretty comfortable when the outdoor family center is comfortable with, or the board is comfortable with sharing the business plan, it won't cause us a lot of anxiety. So now we haven't seen the building use plan, and it kind of strikes me, David, that we probably have to redo the timing of all of this. So I think we're supposed to review it tonight, and I know it's not quite ready. So
yeah, those are our initial projections, which are often rosy. So yeah, we can update those projections.
Yeah, and John, this is not like to put pressure on you. It's more like we don't want to get in the way of your making progress towards kicking off your fundraising and everything. So we should probably, I know we're probably not meeting next week. I know I can't be there and David can't be there, but when we do meet again, sort of resetting, the timeline, so we're both sort of at least on the same page, so that, I just hate it if you're all ready to go and this committee just met last Thursday and won't be meeting for another month. And so you have to wait. So, that kind of thing we're just trying to avoid. So.
Absolutely. And I apologize that I thought we would have this to share with you all tonight. But we certainly as soon as we can.
Like I said, it's really more about us being respectful of your timeline than you being respectful of our agendas, in my opinion. Can't speak for Drew, but in my opinion, that's where we are.
I appreciate that. And just to, I know the biggest question I think on everybody's minds is like, how many weddings? And my proposal initially started with 10 as a maximum, and then The business plan that was presented was 6 to 7, 5 years out. So those are the types of numbers we're looking at in terms of those types of events. And the vast majority of the other things we're talking about are community based. They're educational, they're recreational, they're educational. They really fit with the original intent of the buildings. And not that I don't think that weddings also were part of the original intent, because they clearly were written into the easement. But that's not what we're focused on as a business model, or really who the Outdoor Family Center is as our core mission.
Great.
Thanks, John. Do we have any other questions, comments for John? No? Okay, so just to bring Kim up to speed and John as well, we did vote to approve the governance framework memo that we've been working on for so long. So congratulations to everybody. And we can move on to the invasive species management plan.
I think, Kim, you have to just barge in.
I wasn't even trying to raise my hand. I haven't been able to
Oh.
like hear until now. I don't know why the hand is raised. Like the first thing I
You're
heard was
just waving.
Jean saying, "Kim, you have to just barge in," and I was like, "I've been trying to get in the room, Jean." Like,
Oh,
We've seen your little name for the last 5 minutes,
I
so
don't
you
know
missed
what's
it.
going on. Oh,
Um,
really? My
Mhm.
computer has just been like I almost emailed you all again to be like, I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you've been in
Here
the
we go.
room. Okay.
Well, I don't know what the deal is.
So Kim,
Well,
I'll just point out that we did decide that we have two different names for the committee that have been sort of floating around: Catamount Community Forest Management Committee and Catamount Community Forest Committee. And we've decided to take out the management. So we're just going to make that quick amendment to the framework, and we're going to go with that going forward.
Great.
Because we're all about the confusion between COFC and CCFC.
To be fair, I don't know if CCFMC really helps.
True.
So has everybody had a chance to take a look at the invasive species management plan that Rob Hyam sent us?
Yes, but I'm afraid to toggle between
I can
documents.
walk everybody through it.
Yeah.
So I worked with Bob going back and forth on his early drafts and outlines. So it's pretty short and straightforward, which I think is good. He starts with a little bit of a personal statement, just kind of qualifying some of the inherent challenges in trying to put it together, noting that this is coming from his experience as a invasive species management small business operator in working a lot in the Champlain Valley. Noting that the scope of work is really to enable this committee to be able to operationalize this, to reach out and work with contractors and start to get things done, which is the log jam that has been present. His introduction does some quick categorization of different rough habitat types at the forest, and he goes a little bit into defining non-native invasive plants, or non-native invasive plants, which is the preferred terminology he uses in this context. So helpful to have an internal definition, because there are some widely accepted definitions for invasive, but you hear it used in different contexts. So he provides his definition for the purpose of this plan. And then goes into a quick summary of those 4 general habitat types that he feels are different enough in terms of their invasive pressures to categorize. What are the kind of major notes about each? And he identifies forested, which is primarily, but north of the power line, in the main trail system, in the largest block of forest, and then some other smaller blocks on the southern side, what he calls scrub shrub, which is your shrubland habitat. So that includes, for example, the forest edge and the power line cut, some of the wetland areas that are succeeding into forest gradually over time. Shrubbier, lower, not fully forested, a lot more sun. You get some different species in there. Grassland, mainly referring to the large wetland grasslands that we have with reed canary grass and wild parsnip. And transitional, which is in between scrub shrub, essentially young forest habitat. So Bob worked with Colin and I. Colin is our planning tech who assisted with some of this mapping to take Bob's identified management units and put them into a map. So Bob has worked out here since certainly before I was on. Some of you probably recall some of the work he's done in the past. So Bob has some insight into some of the work that has been done here. And you'll see that referenced in a few areas in the plan. For example, this aspen release area that he was involved with Ethan Tapper and working in these patch cuts he did. So he came up with names for these different larger management units and then wrote notes about their qualities and management aspects in the table that follows. So one thing you'll note is this is a 400-acre parcel. It was a limited scope and budget for this project. So he noted that he couldn't walk every trail, he couldn't visit every single patch of the forest, but the blocks that he identified were the hot spots and priority areas where he felt like should be action either could be taken, they could be immediately inserted into a prioritization or prioritized for volunteer work, we commented. So there are areas that didn't end up on this map and they can be included and added over time as we develop this out and get more data from volunteer work and future management work. And so the sort of heart of the plan then is taking those units that he identified. He talks about their size, general description, and then the nature of the infestation in each, along with proposed treatment, a work plan for those treatments in terms of whenever you would start. So year 1 for that management unit, year 2 for that management unit, year 3. Most of them are 1 to 3 year treatments, other considerations. So this was really helpful. There's some things that are pretty important to note here, which is that we'll need to work with the wetlands program to get essentially, when it comes time to operationalize working in many of these units, we'll have to reach out to the wetlands program and get approval to work in a wetland or wetland buffer area. Fortunately, this dovetails pretty nicely with the delineation work that's been done out there through Catamount's permit work on being able to permit the trail system. So we have a very good idea of where those wetlands are, which should facilitate that process. And as the committee requested, he identifies really where he thought it should be professional work and where volunteers can come into the mix. So a lot of these areas that are more major infestations or have a lot of woody invasives that he's identified are really, the plan calls for professional work. Cut stump and brush cut is herbicide and a mechanized brush cutter. So that's where you bring in the professionals. And as he works through this, he identifies.
Hey, David, can I ask a question before you go too far? Under East Patch Cut, I just don't know. He says fall, 4th line in the middle column. It says fall QC treatment. I couldn't find what QC meant.
Yeah. He does use some acronyms, some of which aren't introduced. That's quality control. So essentially a third pass.
Okay. Like, 'cause I would have guessed quality control, but that didn't make any sense to me. So, okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make some notes. We can certainly make some edits and tune it up.
Is there a
Okay.
difference between cut, stump, and brush cut?
Yes, so cut stump is slower and a little more precise.
Mhm.
Essentially, it's kind of two modalities. One, cut stump, you cut the stump, stop what you're doing, you take a little bingo dabber of herbicide, you blot it along the living tissue of the woody invasive plant, and
Yep.
then you move on and you
Yep.
cut the next one. Brush cutting is more efficient way to work for large infestations where you have somebody working through an acre or more. Essentially, how it works is uh, your technician goes through with a mechanized brush cutter and identifies and cuts all of the woody invasives down to the ground. There's no stop, to pick up the herbicide, put it down. You just work through the area. From there, there's two strategies that you can then go back and usually with a spray bottle, so use a slightly more herbicide than cut stump, but is more efficient for large areas. You can treat on the spot. But usually the way it works is you do your brush cut, then you leave for about 3 to 4 weeks, and the plants will then reflush and they'll put out a low mound of foliage, which makes them highly susceptible to uptake of herbicide. So then the technician goes back, there's all of these little invasive mounds, and then they just work through the area with a sprayer doing targeted, essentially zapping each of those little rosettes. So
Oh,
it's a
cool.
more efficient two-part way of working through large, heavily infested areas.
Okay. And foliar is spray, right?
Yeah, foliar spray.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So you'll also notice as you scan through this, Bob doesn't shy away from being brutally honest when he thinks it's a heavy lift or a pretty challenging area. He notes a couple places where he thinks it's pretty challenging, like this east patch cut. Although he still prioritized that one. There's a couple others, or one other block he calls the block that
Is this organized in level of priority?
this table is not. This
There's one area he calls the block.
Yeah, he calls the block that he said is essentially it didn't make his first pass prioritization because it's a heavy infestation, but you could put all $5,000 per year into it potentially, and while leaving all these other hot spots to get worse. So from his professional judgment, he felt like the best allocation of funding was to leave that one essentially as is for the time being, until some of these other areas that are more ripe for management are taken care of.
Is there ever, I don't know any, I don't know if this is crazy, but like, is there some kind of nuclear option on like the block that's so terrible? Like just burn it all down, start over? I mean, maybe that doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like what I
It does happen, but not often in the Northeast. But yeah, I mean, sometime I was just in BC and I saw a place where they basically like harvested almost everything and then are grazing cattle to like graze it down to, just like
Wow.
regen again. But I mean, it's a totally different landscape.
Yeah, I think so. The other thing about the block is a lot of these areas that he identified are there might be edge habitat, they're more transitional, they're a patch cut that is not regenerating properly, it's getting a lot of full sun. And those are areas where invasives can grow really fast, they get to fruiting really fast, and they're spreading more and more. Whereas the block, it's really bad, but it's primarily understory. So if you don't do anything there ever, when all of the trees in the canopy start to die, there's going to be a really hard time regenerating that forest with anything other than invasives.
Yeah.
So but that also means that those plants that are there, even though they're pretty prolific, they're not necessarily getting as much full sun. They might not fruit as much. So I think within that calculus, there's potentially a little more time to tackle it. And I noticed as I read through the various drafts that Bob identified areas where he thought volunteers could be effective. In particular, he thought that the trails, working along the edges of the trails, could be a great place for people to get involved, whether they're recreationists who care about the trail system, or campers, or dedicated town volunteers to work down those trail systems and prevent them from being vectors of spread. And then parsnip was the other thing that I think was identified as volunteer. So here's the sort of disclaimer: not feasible to cover every trail, but certainly, the plan can be added to as hotspots, pockets, other ideas are identified over time. So then Bob went through the exercise of trying to turn that into a prioritization and schedule to meet the committee's request, working with this idea of around $5,000 per year. Bob did initially want to push back on this idea of a 10-year plan. He said in his experience, it's just, you really have to be approaching invasive species management through what he called adaptive management, meaning that he felt the reevaluation cycle needs to be much, much more regular than every 10 years. So I asked him to try to put as much down on paper for years 6 through 10 as he felt reasonable, but he thought that was a little bit of a fool's errand. So it's kind of a TBD in the plan. But so he talks a little bit about that idea of adaptive management here. He said that if you could do higher expenditures in year 1 and 2, that makes more of a difference. And he has some comments just on his perspective. For this effort to succeed over the course of 10 years, it really needs a champion, somebody to be paying attention to it, not just letting this sit in the big pile of plans that Williston has accumulated over time. It needs volunteers to be infusing energy into it, and it needs to be operationalized. So those are some big needs. And then for his cost analysis, he's got some notes here. One of his notes is interesting, is 5K, although that seems like to the committee a decent investment. It's not that much to a contractor who might be looking for big or sort of steady contracts or whatever. So he does say, it could be more attractive job to contractors if they could take on more than 5K in a single season. Something to keep in mind. So if we can supplement that, from my perspective, I think if we can even get that investment going over time, that would be a really big deal. And you could see positive change. But once we have that, it could be a jumping off point, potentially to get grants to do some more work, that kind of thing. So, but that was a note that he put in there. And then, so he put the schedule together, taking all of those individual section, 1 to 3 year work plans and laying them out, or 1 to 4 year work plans and laying them out in a prioritization. He noted to me that this isn't necessarily the only prioritization to come up with, but one that he put together to try to make some smart decisions about how to fit it all together. And noting that in addition to this idea of adaptive management, he, just not really knowing what's going to be happening in years 6 through 10, he also projects that, costs are going to go up. So he has a couple notes in there, but he puts down essentially how that 5K could break down, or approximately 5K. So he recommended it in doing a bit of a kickstart, 6 5.4K in year one in the Sandman's block we identified, and working down.
For you spending the money on invasives before the end of June, are you able to use any of this?
Yes. Okay. So that's a great question. I was going to talk about it. So operate a plan is one thing. Operationalizing a plan is a totally another thing. So we have $1,500 that we have to spend by June 30th. Bob noted in his plan that you can't work in wetland areas until you have
The
DEC sign off. We don't have time to do that. So how can we make the best advantage of 1,500? So what I did was, and we're still working this out because I need CFC to weigh in. John, I just sent your team an email to try to coordinate on this. So I'll need to work with the Outdoor Family Center to try to identify, take some bites out of this apple in a way that minimizes trail disruption. What I tried to do is I tried to essentially take chunks, from the highest priority things that are in upland areas that are in one general area that could be chained together by a contractor for that work. So I made two smaller subunits of this Sandman's unit that he identified that are clearly in upland areas. I grabbed the Aspen release as a possibility, the north end is a possibility, and then a chunk of the triangle, even though that's in year 6, it's right between these. And Bob wrote in his notes that it could be done in conjunction with Sandman's because they're right next to each other. So I identified those as possibilities. So it's 5 units. It's more than Stephen could do, but depending on what Catamount says and what might make the most sense, we'll do some combination of those. So I think it was helpful to have this here, even noting, okay, what we do is already, you can say it's not going to work perfectly in this table, but having a prioritization, I can see that, okay, well, this is important, this is important. We can start working on that. We can also start reaching out to DEC on a parallel track so that we can figure out what needs to be done to work in some of these other areas. So that's my walkthrough. And yeah, any discussion?
David, one thing I noticed was on his chart, he said like it was 800, like the price
down
was
here.
ridiculous. It was really high. 1.6K or $1,600 represents a full day of 2-person crew. So 800K a day per person, which is, you seem like you got a better deal.
I did. Yeah, were you doing that math in your head?
I couldn't remember if you said 6 days or 5 days, but I know it was more than
5 7-hour days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, Stephen was Stephen's rate is better. Or I don't want to say better, it is lower than this projection.
Yep.
Which is a good thing. So we can
absolutely.
stretch the dollar further and get more work done. I think working in this plan is the kind of thing where we're probably going to work with multiple contractors and groups over time, get different levels of expertise and different people with their energy to work on it. But it seemed like a great connection so far, and Stephen's got a lot of ideas and has either worked with Bob or knows Bob, in the industry, and so is familiar with all these techniques, and I think it'll hopefully be a great starting point.
I spoke with Steve pretty extensively and and shared some of our concerns, around camps and around sharing information for foragers and people who wander off trail. So I think we have a pretty good handle on that. But he did say he would share, the maps and then the timing and all those other things that we need to be.
Yeah, sounds good. Check. I know we've got John. We've got like 3 different things happening in parallel tracks right now.
Okay.
I was just working on this afternoon after our last meeting. I sent you some maps of possible areas where I told Stephen could be good to work in, kind of clustered around Sandman's Wood Trace.
Okay.
And then yeah, the next step is really to work with you and Andy and Amanda and Sequoia and kind of tweak that. Obviously, the goal is we want to take advantage of these funds and get some good work done, and also minimize disruption out there, make sure you can still run your camp safely and all that stuff. And yeah, Stephen has seemed really flexible so far and willing to work on that. We can help with signage. I can send our trail steward out there to help post signage as needed. And Stephen seemed willing to be flexible on things like for example, the Aspen release is like a pretty theoretically simple, it's a relatively small area. But it's adjacent to this trail and then Woods Trace. And I said, okay, well, it would be pretty difficult to have a situation where Woods Trace was closed because it's the only main way to get in here. So, could he make a buffer against that trail where he goes through and works with manual tools in that buffer, and then doesn't start using herbicide and brush cutting until further in. And he's like, well, it would go slower, but I could do it, so the trail could stay open. So he's flexible to some different out of the box ideas. So take a look at those maps. Let me know what you think. We can go back and forth on this a little bit. He's ready to start as soon as Monday, and I finished doing all his paperwork with him this week. So I don't think it needs to be all contiguous days. He seems pretty flexible. So the name of the game is transparency and flexibility, and we'll try to make it work.
What I think would make sense in my head, because we do have more than $5,000. We have, I guess, does it make sense to say, okay, this is phase one, it's going to be Sandman and North End and Aspen, and maybe we pull Triangle in, whatever, just like this is a 3-year, this is phase one, theoretically use all our 3 years worth of the ARPA money, and we already have, I can't quite remember how your chart works, David, if it's $6,000 or $9,000 on top of that, and try to deal with it in big chunks. I mean, I kind of agree that doing small, assuming we can get someone to do it, right? That would be sort of like the goal, to prioritize some, do it in like 3 phases, with clearly the block and West Wetland being the last. You can't do all Sandman. Maybe next Sandman might be next summer. But anyways, it's like, it doesn't have to all happen this year, but a 3-year plan to do these blocks with the money that we have. And I kind of feel like if we are actually doing something and being effective and people can see change, that will do 2 things. One, it's easier for the town to give us more money because they're seeing some success, and maybe more of an incentive to volunteers because they're actually seeing the town doing something. So I kind of agree that we should start faster if at all possible.
Yeah, well, that's good. That was on my mind as I was trying to pick areas. My constraints were essentially I wanted to use Bob's plan as much as I could. And then second constraint was I needed to only pick upland areas. And then third, I did consider, among that, if we sent Stephen out there with $1,500 to go work in the middle of the woods and no one can see it, we might do some good work, but we miss out on some of those ancillary benefits. So if he's working in this area, which is in many ways the gateway to the forest, and everyone can see a lot of, that some of that work that's been done. But just like you were saying, Gene, it could be a really nice catalyst to kicking off this push.
Is more work anticipated in the fall when it's more?
Well, as soon as the fiscal year rolls around, your budget resets. You've talked about allocating money annually out of that, so there'd be some funding there. And then, as Gene said, we can we have the $1,500 in the stewardship, well, really 1,500 plus 3 that is in the stewardship fund that has essentially been allocated for invasive species management. 1,500 was from ARPA, and 3,000 was from a previous stewardship request in 2024 to
So then we could make another request for the stewardship fund, right, to make it a larger chunk of money in the fall.
You could, yeah, I think, yeah, you could absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and fall is a great time to work. I talked to Stephen about, this time of year, and he said in his experience, it, it's still extremely effective to work this time of year. Early spring can be a little challenging because of what the plants are doing, but he's seen high, just relatively just as high effectiveness from using the general methods at this time of year. And in addition, with some of these two-part methods, you might be cutting now, but then you're not actually using the herbicide for another 3 weeks. So he had no concerns about jumping in at this time of year. But all right, why was I bringing that up? Yeah, because fall is also a great time, and is because a lot of the plants are bringing resources back down from their leaves into their roots, which is why it's generally been recommended as a great time to use any kind of foliar or stem application of herbicides to treat these species, because the kill ratio is really high.
Can you tell us more about
Yeah.
the herbicides that he plans to use and what potential impacts there might be on the people who are using the trails regularly?
So he uses the standard techniques in the industry, the same ones that Bob would. Essentially, there are a couple chemicals, but glyphosate is the predominant chemical that is used. There's two formulations that are generally used. One is used for upland areas, and one is used for wetland areas, and they have to do with the other elements that are in the chemical mix and how it binds to soil to become inactive or become inactive in water, so it doesn't run off. So I think that's part of why you need to coordinate with DEC before working wetland areas, because they have to ensure that your plan is sound and that you're using chemicals that are appropriate, assuming that they allow those techniques. So we'll have to find out. But in general, those conditions for using herbicide, if you're using any kind of foliar technique, even if it's acute, short distance spray, you don't want to do it on a super windy day or anything like that. I think you don't want to do it in the pouring rain, but most other weather conditions are acceptable for it. Stephen did not recommend like broadcast spraying, like anything other than cut stump or essentially a direct spray, because there's very little by kill or spreading of chemical when you do those techniques. But if you were doing any kind of broadcast spraying, which it's much easier to kill other things and it's easier to spread chemicals, so he did not recommend that. But generally, I'd leave the guidelines to him, but there are recommendations on how many hours you're supposed to wait before letting general public back into a place that's where treatment has occurred. But there should be no effects on the public other than temporary trail closures, because he's out there using mechanized equipment and using herbicide, and so don't want people going into those areas. That's it. That's as far as I know.
Okay, great.
David, do you feel comfortable if we sort of leaned on you to try to group this into at least a phase one that comes up to something like $20,000 or $21,000 ish? Or you don't have to. I actually wouldn't worry about the dollars because I don't even know how much this is really going to cost. But knowing that we have $20,000, rearranging the table a little bit, so you say these are the areas we want to approach in phase one.
Yeah, yeah, I can take a stab at that, assuming I'm kind of interpreting it, correctly. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think Stephen also, when we are out there, he made some points similar to Bob in terms of thinking in shorter units. He's saying essentially for every unit that you're working in, be thinking in kind of like 3 to 5 year chunks. You're doing your work, you're assessing how well it went, and then you're, recalculating. But yeah, in general, for most of Bob's recommended treatments, you're essentially doing that quality control step. So the last thing you do is going in there and double checking and seeing kind of how things went. So I can take that and try to group it into a phase one based on that figure. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That could be maybe done, started in the fall.
Well, we could essentially start it. I mean, right now, the goal was to move quickly enough that we can take advantage of the funds that you have that expire in 6/30. But right, the stewardship funds are not on a time clock. So right, we could start that planning process and get something going, starting late summer, fall. Absolutely.
If you have a person who's excited and motivated to tackle it, I don't know why we'd wait if he's. I've had the same experience Stephen recommend. I've treated stuff in the early summer. It works fine at killing things. Anyway, so I hate to lose somebody who's inexpensive and enthusiastic.
All right. Happy to talk to Stephen about extending that.
Yeah.
We should probably coordinate with Tony D'Amato and just make sure that he's aware of any dates that we might be working in and around his project sites as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Bob recommended that was one area that he said could be prioritized potentially for volunteers, potentially in cooperation, coordination with UVM. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Be in touch.
As I read the plan, the east patch cut, is that what it's called? Just scroll back a little bit. It seems like that one was a mess too. And I don't remember who decided that was a good idea to do, if it was part of UVM's project or if that was the forester, but it'd be interesting to know, oops, that didn't go so well. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Cause we did ask questions you're gonna do this patch cut, and what if just all the invasives spring up? And then they're like, well, you're gonna have to treat them.
Yeah.
Well, in hindsight, was that a bad idea?
I think it's a really astute observation. The difference between this patch cut and this patch cut is pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of forest regeneration in.
Yeah.
There is a big difference between the west and the east side. And I don't know if that's because Bob has worked out here before. The west side is much better. This side is a total mess. I walked out there with Stephen. I wanted to just throw him right in there to start working on it, because he looked at it and he said, yeah, you don't want to let this go. It's all full sun. And it has received some treatment before. Obviously, Bob flags it for that reason. The reason I didn't is because the wetland delineations that we've had are the line stops essentially here. So this side is delineated and we know what boundaries to work around, but this side is not. And this map shows the Vermont wetland inventory polygon. So that's what that's the best guess.
Yeah.
But we did see some wet areas out here. So there's a decent probability that the buffer or some wetland extends out here, and we just didn't know where it was. So I thought it was safer to avoid that to start. But yeah, it's definitely a place to be working, because it's not gonna get.
And I guess my main question was who was it that would make that lesson learned true or false? Like, do we want the forester to give his opinion on it? Like, is that part of UVM? I mean, obviously there was some decision to do that. And it was like a demonstration, I thought, that Ethan wanted to do, and like, whose responsibility for assessing the success of that so we can learn from it?
It's a good question. I don't know.
That was the, are you talking about, is that the Brontosaurus cut?
Yeah,
Oh, that might be the Aspen release,
they
right?
both were brought.
Oh, they're both.
Yeah,
Because the Aspen release is not the same. It does have invasives in there, but it's not as bad as the East Patch cut. And it has it got a lot of good Aspen regeneration.
yeah.
I guess like, I don't think we need to ask Tony because I don't feel like hang on, Nico. I don't think it impacts his project. I mean, I guess we could ask his expertise, but I don't think it like impacts his project, right?
I don't think so.
But that was kind of just what you were saying, like get someone's expertise
Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Somebody's expertise. You know, like, hey, why did it work well over here and not work over there? And what do we learn from it so we don't make things worse in the future? Or did we make things worse? Maybe we did make things worse. I don't know. Like, just somebody reflect on it now that it's such a disaster.
Reading Bob's notes, I think part of the reason it's a good observation is because the block, like this whole area is a pretty bad understory infestation. So I think if you were to open some of these up, you'd probably get the same thing happen. And Bob also notes that as you go farther north, the situation changes pretty dramatically. So all up here in this part of the forest,
It's pretty good.
and up on the hills, it's not nearly as bad. So the power line is probably a good spreader, and just working its way into the forest from that edge is my guess of why those areas are so much worse. Sandmans, the patch cut, the block.
Interesting.
Oh, that's the power line, somehow I was imagining that to be the road.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
this is
this
the
is all
power-
further up, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of okay. That's what I took away from it, and yeah. Any other things that you noticed? Questions you have? Comments?
This was our $5,000 of like
Three.
Okay, this was our go make an invasive plan, and we struggled on getting it done, but now we've got it done. So hooray!
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed is that he focused heavily on the importance of volunteers, and maybe for a future agenda item, we should probably discuss where these volunteers come from, and how they get organized.
Well, they did have the Boy Scouts, but I don't know if the volunteer with kids issue is resolved with the town.
So I can comment on that. So the Scouts are a slightly different situation because they're an institution that carries insurance, and they have quite a bit of internal infrastructure around requirements for how many trained adults you have with the kids, and age appropriate tool use, and all this kind of stuff. So last year we went through the exercise with our local scout troop, and the town manager's office of putting back together a kind of annual agreement that essentially works as like a troop-wide waiver. Here's the agreement between the town for doing volunteer work as the scouts, and then they have their own protocols. So I can set up a volunteer day with them, and then I reach out to the Boy Scout DSA and request a certificate of insurance for that date. So that's how they kind of cover these kinds of events. So we can set up, we're now kind of have the infrastructure after that exercise last year to set up volunteer work again with the scouts.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could absolutely get that going. I can also comment that Terry Marin's already geared up for the season to start working on parsnip. And I've connected her with our new trails coordinator, or trail steward, Isaac, who is gonna help her do some work next week. And we have a new
The family center or from?
at the family center.
No,
Isaac is our,
here.
yes. and maybe I didn't announce that, announced it for the Conservation Commission, we talked about it. We have a new trail steward for the town. The last couple years, Ann O'Day, I don't know if any of you ever met Ann, filled that role. And Ann has kind of been phasing out that work as she's retired and she's got other exciting adventures. She's hiking the PCT this summer.
Oh, man.
So she's moved on. We really appreciate everything Ann did, but it's great to have somebody new who can fill out those hours. So Isaac has started full-time in June, is working 20 hours a week. And is can be monitoring the trails, doing some trail work, helping with invasive species management and volunteer coordination through the end of August. So that's a really nice capacity booster for me. And it's going to mean that we can just provide more staff support for these kinds of projects. So that's Parsnip work is going to be kicking off. And I worked at the town manager's office to put together a new, essentially seasonal waiver, parsnip specific seasonal waiver. So you can sign a waiver once to do parsnip work for the season. And you can do any date that is scheduled by town staff, Terry as a designated volunteer, or Chapin Kanyard as a designated volunteer.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. It's a nice step forward in some of the, volunteer log jam or challenges that we've been working through the last couple of years. So that's one piece of the volunteer thing. And then I think another is just working with Catamount. And I think there's probably some great opportunities for working with campers or doing volunteer days, just to get more people out there and participating.
Mm-hmm.
Might be nice I'm bringing Tony up again, but when his students are out there, we could just say, hey, if you have a little bit of time, if they could pull up some buckthorn or whatever, I mean, the more people, the better, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I got muted there. Are there any other questions or comments on the invasive species management plan? Okay, so it's 6:33, looks like, and the next item on the agenda is the work plan. So we had
Kim says congrats at Kim turned off the video just because of connection, but Kim says congrats everyone on getting the plan done.
Right, now we just get to implement it. And that's a combination of us and town staff.
Right.
Okay,
That's that governance work plan thing.
right.
Delegating.
Maybe we could have an update on this, the agenda next one.
Sure. It's a good idea.
good job. Okay, so I guess moving on, the governance memo that we just approved kind of focused on the structure of our committee and what we're focusing on, and the work plan that I've created follows a comment that Jean had made at this point a couple of months ago about how we should focus on the different items of governance that we have been tasked with doing, and sort of taking a closer look at those items and seeing if we agree that those are within our purview, and then maybe having a discussion around what it means to tackle those. So I created this spreadsheet that kind of categorizes those different areas in which we work. And then I sort of break it down into what it might look like to have that as the basis for a work plan. Now, the work plan column that I threw in there is just sort of to be used as an example, but it might be something that we want to see if we can use to operationalize what we do throughout the course of a year as a committee. So we could take a closer look at that.
I just shared this PDF and I'm noting that it's kind of blocked up. And I think you emailed me at one point the in Excel of this. Does that sound right?
That's possible. I think I've sent you a few different versions of it. So, right.
Wonder if I can find it. Apologies, I didn't think of that in advance. Just so we could see everything all at once.
Maybe I can send you a link to the Google Doc that I have.
Okay, yeah, you can do that too.
Give me a second here. Okay, I just hit send on that.
There, it just came through.
Okay.
Oh, I got a page not found. You might have to share it with me.
Or you can share a screen.
Or you could share your screen, right? Why am I? You're on the
Share my
computer.
screen. All right, now we're getting.
Yeah, thanks, Hans.
So I live on meetings like this all day long.
Yeah, sorry. You think we'd have everything ironed out at this point, though.
Says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh my goodness, what is going on here?
You might need to like promote him to even more than a panelist.
Man. Sorry, everybody. Host tools, panelists and attendees. Okay. All right, let me see. Let me try. I should know how to solve this by now.
Make host co-host. Oh, make host or co-host.
There should be a simple way. I'll just make you a co-host. Let's see if that works.
Change the privileges on that Google sheet and resent it to you. So
Okay. We'll go
we'll
that
see
way.
which version works quicker here.
I got it. All right.
Oh, good.
Sorry, everybody.
No problem.
Here we go. All right. We're in.
So the second column is sort of the little bites that came out of the work that Dave had done going through all of our forest management plan, et cetera. And then the first column is breaking those into governance categories, basically. So it's perhaps reversed. And then as you go across, the third column is what is our role within these different categories? Again, moving across, you got purpose and scope. And then the next column, when discussed, if we were to create a work plan, we would have some sort of a guidance for each month that we have a meeting. We can say, all right, it's time to discuss the budget. So we do that in June. We'll have that already sort of, within our agenda. And then moving across, you got the primary focus, what we'd be doing there, the agenda items and expected output. So I guess one of the questions is, going back to the first column, do we think that I've got the right categories here? And how can we use this?
Okay, what are the categories? Forest management plan, oversight and update.
Drew, one thing I just want to confirm, so the reason this is governance work plan is because these are all the items that were categorized as governance and policy, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So if we like sort of this sort of exercise, we could go back into what we had done before, and there were a few things within recreation and invasive species, et cetera, that we would go add to it. So this is just sort of a model because Gene had said, let's start with governance and take a closer look at it. So that's kind of
yeah. Okay, great. It's definitely.
Yeah.
Is the policy review and recommendation, like that would be changing the management plan? And is row one the town forest management plan, or is that the cut trees down forest plan?
Good question. That's the CFP, the Community Forest Plan. So that's the town.
And that's where all the policies would live, right?
Yeah.
So like maybe row one and row three are kind of the same thing. Like one is, you might consider a change to the management plan. Or do we have policies that are not in the management plan? How do we think about policies?
Yeah, we're several layers removed from the original exercise, so I can't recall exactly what all these original line items came. I think that trapping is called out somewhere as like if somebody wanted to trap, they would go. I think they have to get approved by the select board. They have to go to the select board and say, I want to trap for this reason. So it was specifically named somewhere as like trapping was it. So that might be why that trapping policy. I can't recall what that.
I feel like we have it in there because we thought possibly that we would need it for management purposes. Like, I think it was around the time that maybe the town did some trapping of beavers in the Allen Brook. And we were like, oh, if it's expressly forbidden, that might be difficult to do.
Makes sense. So yeah, so some of these things I think it's helpful to remember that they could be like an extremely niche, they could only come up in an extremely niche situation, or they also could end up not needing like an operational component. If that makes any sense.
And so this table is for governance. So there would be other tables then later for other categories, and I'm not remembering what are those categories at that level. Governance is one.
I think recreation was another, education.
That was from our original analysis that we did to figure out our charter as a committee.
I can find it. I think it's in the minutes for the March meeting.
And these are all pulled from the Excel spreadsheet that had lots of different.
Yeah, they're all distilled from that.
Okay.
This was like a grouping of all the stuff. So we read all these documents,
Right.
or David did, maybe two, and then extracted it all in the massive spreadsheet, and then we summarized it down to these
Like
categories.
the 5 things, like governance being one of them, and now we have.
Within governance,
Within
it
governance,
explodes
all.
out to these things.
So what is our goal from this right now?
I
Is
don't
it to
know,
review?
I think it's,
The question is, do we want, this is moving it a step forward and looking at the different action items in the column, and I guess coming up with or having a discussion about whether or not these are things that we agree are within our governance purview. And then looking into operationalizing this potentially as some sort of a work plan going forward.
So,
When discussed, so like an annual work plan.
so
Yeah.
just for quick context for everyone, this was that, the version
Okay.
that spawned Drew's current work plan.
Mhm.
This was like, we took all those sort of raw data points, like
Mhm.
things that were mentioned in the various baseline documents, and categorized them. And then, so one of those categories is general governance and planning. That's where all these items are that made it into Drew's proposed kind of work plan.
I feel like we would need to just pick one and work it through. So if we are responsible for the management plan, we would collect possible changes to it, and the next time it needs to get rewritten, we would have collected those changes over the course of a year, 2 or 3. And then we prioritize them as a committee to what we would want to propose to be changed. So then in the next iteration of the management plan, we would recommend that, because that's from our other document we approved tonight, that's what we do, we make recommendations, so. Hey, just approve the management plan unchanged, no changes, or like last time we started talking, oh, maybe we should, think about deer hunting or something else. So I think there's definitely an action to be done for our committee on this one. We're sort of doing it a little bit informally, but this would make it a little bit formal, like. As a committee, we need to collect possible changes to the management plan, vet them, prioritize them, and be prepared the next time the management plan. Or, decide when to pull the trigger, on like, hey, let's go to the select board and propose change to the management plan. Otherwise you'd only change it the next time you have to change it, right?
Yeah.
Cause we could go anytime and say, we wanna change this, like, we could change, we could recommend anytime a change. But mostly unless it's urgent, we just wait till the next time it gets revised.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that one's one of the more straightforward ones. It's like, if there's any purpose to this committee, it's updating that plan, if there's any core purpose, it's updating that plan.
And then the budget, we do that pretty well.
So some of these will require kind of like backtracking a little bit to just kind of re-identify what was the thing it came from. For example, the annual action plan, annual budget, excuse me, is something that has been done every year, because there's the fiscal year and you have to make one. The annual action plan is referenced somewhere, and I don't think that protocol has always necessarily been followed, or maybe it's not important anymore. But at some point, there's clearly this idea that the committee was going to create this annual action plan that's some part of the year. So that's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, okay, we should look at what that intention was and decide, is it still a helpful thing? Is it just extra work? Is it something that is in one of these core documents such that you're kind of obligated to do it? And should really try to bring it back. So I think that's kind of how I would look at some of these.
So when Andrew said, maybe we want to consider reaching out to volunteers for the invasive management in the fall, that could be on our annual planning calendar. Is that what you mean? Or is that what we mean?
if we were gonna build an action plan, that's
Yeah,
something
yeah, sure,
reasonable
yeah.
that you put on
It
there.
could be. I'm just saying in terms of like these original line items, it's probably gonna be useful to
Go
kind of,
learn
yeah,
what that
reverse
means.
engineer them again and try to
Yeah.
figure out, okay, what did this actually mean? Like I extracted them all for the sake of being able to see everything in one place and kind of
Mhm.
categorize, but some of them maybe would have been helpful if I had provided more detail or reference, because I can't recall what annual action plan is, except that I think in one of the documents, it says like the committee is going to create an annual action plan.
Yeah.
So I think kind of like the homework for you is not necessarily making that annual action plan. It's deciding, do we feel like an exercise of an annual action plan is A, required, B, helpful, or C, not helpful anymore? And, we should amend whatever document to remove that, like, that's kind of what I'm thinking about some of these, if that makes any sense.
I think maybe one thing that would be helpful, I guess, is if we were to uh, adapt this into something that's maybe more of a narrative form or written out, at least when I worked on work plans in the past, you have something that says at the top objective, and it might say, like in our first column here, forest management plan and oversight. And then you'd say, what is our objective within that? And then below you have action items like this is what it means. We do X, Y, and Z. And then, if we move it another step, we say, this is when we do those things. Because right now we're dealing with a lot of rows and a lot of columns, and it's hard to perhaps visualize based on this format what all of this means.
Right. That's a good point.
And most of these were pulled from narratives already.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of, Dave's been saying we need to reverse engineer it. So
So
I
could we
think
go to
it
the
does.
narratives and
What's
add
that?
bullet points on, could we go to the narratives and add bullet points underneath the narrative that's already there on when
Yeah, I mean,
when we've done it? When we wanna do it? Clearly, I'm a little bit confused about our directive right now.
well, I mean, my best guess, my best interpretation is we just wrote a document that said we advise. And, we advise on all these capacities.
Mhm.
But now we have to a 12-month calendar, and is it every month we're like, hey, what should be on the agenda this month? But like an annual action plan might give a structure that it's a document we're always coming back to. That we know what we plan to do for the whole year. It's just like an annual plan. And the annual plan would be structured in a way with categories of things that we should be probably doing.
Right.
And let's see, AI is building me an action plan and it has categories, like we're gonna do grassland and field management, did that happen? So it's like like an annual checklist of everything that, like, is gonna go on at the forest, not COFC activities, but do we want to get some parking lot maintenance? Do we have budget for it?
Mhm.
Civiculture activities.
Yeah, and I think it's also something that if we were to get a new member to the committee, you could hand this over to them and say, this is what we do, and this is when we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you do it once, then, the next year's annual plan, you just like evolve it. Say like, what didn't we do? What do we want to do this next year?
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Kim, his comments online recommended that a Gantt chart could potentially work for that. Are you all familiar with Gantt charts? It's like essentially it's kind of like a timeline chart. It's like, here's your goal, here are your action items, and then it plots them out on like a calendar type chart.
Also, like you can add categorization and dimension, so you can be like, I don't know. I'm always like planning, implementation, dissemination because I make them for research grants. But like it could be like something like that. Like the categories that Hans was just saying would work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. does that come with the software, or what is the basis for that? Is that something?
I just make them in Excel. I mean, there are like really fancy ones, but um I just like usually I have like written some like big project narrative and then like I don't break it down into goals, objectives, and tasks, and then I put it to a timeline and the project is never what I say it is going to be, but
Here's
it's like
yeah, sorry.
it's
Cut you off.
helpful. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just sharing a simple example. This is one that we're using for the Catamount, the town Catamount for Family Center working group. So I just downloaded an Excel template and you put your items essentially on this timeline. Breaks down kind of when they're happening, or you can use them for tracking progress too. Things.
Yeah, this is like similar to what I build. I kind of have like one template that I am just constantly changing.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, what would be useful for people as a next step on this? I'm not sure that everybody's fully on board with this as a tool necessarily that could be useful.
I mean, yeah, we should make an annual plan.
Very clear guiding documents.
Either we need to make an annual plan or we need to plan to revise the management plan to say that we don't have to.
Okay.
Okay.
So for, let's say, next meeting, should I be looking at the other categories that are not in this? So this is focusing on governance. Do we want to break it down into recreation and the other items that were in there as well? There's not a lot. We focus on governance because that's where the bulk of what our work is. I could do that on my own and then just try to break this down a little bit more so that it's clearer.
From my perspective, there's sort of two things, just thinking back to this conversation, because you all were having this conversation, there was kind of a gap in time and now you're returning to it. So one of them, I think, it was developing this kind of annual timeline, that this idea that I think Hans originally called it like the annual temperature check. It's like you can check in on the like, is this being done? Like if not, what needs to be done? If yes, great, check and move on. So I think that like this idea of putting together an annual plan is kind of dovetailing with that.
Yeah.
It's like this, it's not so much a what are we going to do this year, although it would be part of that, but how does the calendar year overlap with these various responsibilities? And so I think it's like a slight difference, but they kind of like dovetail into each other. Because once you see the calendar year, it's very easy to say like, okay, well, this year, we might want to address X, Y, and Z. So I think that's an exercise that probably one person or two people could do, is just trying to take as many of these recurring essential items as possible, putting them on a calendar in like a Gantt chart style. And then the second thing that I think, just bringing everybody back to this conversation, was the exercise that's slightly different of going through some of these individual points and saying, okay, well, what did this really mean that we wrote into the original plan to improve trail signage? Did we do a good job of it? Do we need to do more of it? And so that is like a longer, drawn out process that I think kind of needs to go item by item. And you could do it as a committee, you could do it as subcommittees, you could do it as individuals and kind of assign tasks, but a lot of those, I think is like a slower process. So I see those two things. If you're looking for a little structure, that's kind of my recommendation. It's like two places you can approach this bigger conversation. One is putting together that annual plan. And two is starting that work of going through individual items and saying, is this still relevant? Is this essential? Are we doing it? If so, how well? If not, what do we do next?
We have reached 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you, everybody. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
mean, I think I'd be willing to help with, like, making an annual plan, like the Gantt chart idea. I think I am. It's been nonstop graduation and year end and playoffs, and I haven't had time to barely work and think and attend kid activities. But I think into the summer, so I'd be willing to take a stab at the Gantt chart. Can I get the spreadsheet, or is that online then?
It's online,
You send to us already?
but I think Drew has an Excel version. So, I mean, subcommittee is 2 people in this committee. Drew and Hans.
Yep. That works for me.
Sure.
The Gantt chart committee, or maybe you can get a template from Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
I'm happy to share them. I usually do it like,
Be writing the management plan at the same time. You'll be able to eliminate all the things that are not necessary and streamline this whole process. In the subcommittee working group.
Perhaps has to be similar, so after 7.
Yeah,
Are we voting to adjourn? I vote to, or convene, adjourn, finish? I never get that right.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion.
Second.
I.
Thank you.
Aye.
all right, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
I think our brains are all fried from the heat.
Yeah.
It's like the second to last day of school, right? And it was pajama day at ABS. And I don't know why we made this choice as parents, but we let Ellie go in like LL Bean flannel pajamas.
No.
Yep. So she barfed and we had to pick her up early.
Oh, I did hear about a second grader who did get sick today.
Yep, that was my child. That was my
That's
child.
tragic.
And yeah, and we're
She
like
can't-
unclear if she can go tomorrow for the last day of school.
Kim, it is like 85 degrees inside the
I'm
school.
stopping the recording.